In one of the small towns nestled in the heart of Missouri, 78-year-old Harold Whitman had made it a habit to rise with the morning sun. Every day around 7, he stepped out onto the front porch of his old farmhouse, surrounded by stone walls, sat in his weathered rocking chair, and slowly sipped coffee from a ceramic mug. Years ago, he had lost his wife, Margaret. Her death wrapped Harold's inner world in silence, and from that day on, he began living more slowly, more simply. The townspeople liked Harold, but he kept his distance, never letting anyone too close. With no children and siblings either long gone or distant, his world had shrunk to his garden, his books, and his memories. Inside the house, Margaret's belongings remained untouched. A small lavender soap in the bathroom, handmade ceramic plates in the kitchen, old DVD films in the living room, they were all exactly as she had left them. Harold believed memories weren't made by letting go, but by preserving. One day, someone new moved to town, a young woman named Emma. She had fled Boston, escaping her past and the exhaustion of the big city. Emma rented the neighboring farmhouse, just a few hundred meters away from Harold's. Every morning, Harold watched her ride off to town on an old bicycle. There was something in her posture, something that reminded him of the day Margaret first walked into his life. Their first meeting was accidental, a DVD misdelivered letter that Harold returned personally. When Emma opened the door, she was surprised, and Harold, for the first time in years, spoke more than a few words. "I think this letter belongs to you." Emma smiled. "How kind. Most people would have just tossed it aside." "I'm not most people," Harold replied gently. From that day on, a quiet friendship began. Emma would drop by Harold's porch in the evenings to chat about books, old films or recipes. At first, Harold was reserved, but soon Emma's presence began to break the stillness in his home, bringing with it a quiet joy. Emma had her own burdens, broken family ties, a disillusioned career, and a past that hadn't yet healed. Harold listened without judgment. His silent companionship was enough for her. In his patience and simplicity, Emma found a harbor for her weary soul. At night, Harold would sit in his old chair, gaze at the stars, and think of Margaret's memory. But this time, those thoughts weren't just soaked in grief. There was a flicker of hope, too. Autumn arrived slowly in Missouri. Trees turned from golden to crimson, and Harold pulled his blanket a little tighter around him as the aroma of Emma's apple tarts wafted onto the porch. Their friendship had grown into a quiet but deep bond. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Emma now spent more time at Harold's house. They'd sometimes look through old photo albums, or just sit in silence with an old film playing. When Harold teared up while sharing a memory, Emma responded with a soft, knowing smile. One evening, Harold brought out an old box. Inside were tickets from travels with Margaret, notes, postcards, and a worn notebook filled with Harold's own stories, thoughts, and poems. Emma picked it up gently. "Have you ever shared these with anyone?" "No, Margaret may not have even read them all," Harold said. Emma turned a few pages and paused. The writing was rough but heartfelt, lines shaped by years and layered with emotion. "These are beautiful," she said. "You have a real gift?" Harold chuckled. "Not much use for a gift at my age, is there?" "Maybe not," Emma replied. "But it could still mean something to someone." The next week, Emma made a suggestion. "What if we compile these into a little book? I can type them out, clean them up, and we can print a few copies. Maybe even donate one to the local library." Harold resisted at first. He had intended to leave this world quietly, without leaving a footprint. But there was something in Emma's enthusiasm, something like Margaret's youthful sparkle. So the work began. Emma typed a few pages each evening. Harold reviewed and added bits. Sometimes a new poem emerged, sometimes just a quiet sentence honoring the past. When winter came, the snow covered the paths, and Emma left her bicycle aside to walk to Harold's door. Harold now waited for her, a blanket and tea ready. One day, Emma arrived with a dusty vinyl record. "Would you like to listen to this?" It was Nat King Cole's Unforgettable. As the music played, Harold closed his eyes, swaying gently in his chair. In that moment, the past and present blended into one. Emma didn't speak. Some moments don't need words. That night, Harold wrote a new line in his notebook. Some people arrive late in life, but they find the heart right on time. Winter deepened. Snow blanketed the garden, even covering the porch swing with a thin layer of frost. Inside, it was warm, fueled by the crackling stove, the ticking clock, and Emma's steady presence. Emma had finished compiling Harold's writings. She'd contacted a small publisher, and preparations for the printing had begun. Though initially nervous, Harold began to feel at peace. These pages weren't just memories, they were a kind of farewell. Harold had grown quieter. More often, he would pause mid-thought and turn toward the window, watching the snow fall in silence. Emma noticed. The sparkle in his eyes remained, but his journey was gently nearing its end. One evening, Emma sat beside him. "Harold, why did you trust me with your notebook?" He smiled. "Because you listened, truly listened. That's the rarest thing at my age." Emma nodded, her eyes misty. "When I talk to you, I feel like I hear myself. Maybe we're reflections of each other." The next day, Harold fell ill. A mild fever, a slow fatigue. Emma immediately called the town's elderly doctor. "The body's grown tired," the doctor said softly. "But his heart's still strong. He needs rest." Emma stayed by his side day and night. She cooked, read to him, watched the snow. One night, Harold turned to her. "I had a dream once. Margaret and I, moving to a coastal town. She never saw the sea. But in one of my stories, I wrote her there, standing at the shore." Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks. "I'm going to publish that story, Harold. Everyone will read it. Margaret, too, from wherever she is." That night, Harold whispered, "Silence is sometimes the deepest answer. And to be quietly loved in this world, that is the greatest legacy." Spring returned quietly to Missouri. Trees budded anew, the earth smelled of promise. But Harold no longer sat in the rocking chair on the porch. One March morning, Emma walked into his room with a breakfast tray. He sat facing the window, hands folded gently in his lap, utterly still. His face held a deep, peaceful expression, as if he had greeted spring one last time before letting go. The town was shaken by Harold's passing. Nearly everyone came to his church funeral. Emma stood through it all, tearful but strong, because that's what Harold would have wanted. To carry the memories, not be buried in them. Days after the funeral, Emma had Harold's writings published in a small book. The cover read, "Memories of a Chair, Quiet Words from Harold Whitman." The town library gave it a place of honor. A single post from Emma on social media unexpectedly spread the story across the country. Letters poured in from readers touched by Harold's gentle reflections. But for Emma, the most important thing was this: sitting on the porch, in Harold's rocking chair, a warm coffee in her hand, listening to the stillness. In that silence, she could still hear his voice. Some people arrive late in life, but they find the heart right on time. Eventually, Emma moved into Harold's house. She tended the garden, planted flowers. Every spring, she placed a lavender soap in the bathroom, baked apple tarts, and left one chair empty on the porch. Because some people, even when they leave, remain through their scent, their voice, and the words they left behind. And some stories never end. They simply become quieter.